The cold silence of space stretched endlessly around the remains of humanity's once proud defense fleet. Floating wrecks of ships drifted through the darkness like forgotten tombstones. The stars still shined, but for the first time in human history, no one looked at them with wonder. They looked at them with fear. In the command center of Outpost Vega, the last human stronghold near the edge of the Orion Belt, Commander Ethan Cole stood in front of a giant holographic display. Lines of data flickered across the screen: probabilities, survival rates, enemy movements. Every number pointed to the same truth. Humanity had lost. The computer's cold voice repeated what everyone already knew. Estimated chance of human survival, 0.9%. No one in the room spoke. The air was heavy, filled with quiet disbelief. Soldiers stared at the screen as if hoping the number would somehow change. It didn't. Ethan's eyes remained fixed on that glowing red number. He had seen death, destruction, and despair over the past 3 years of war, but this single number hit harder than any explosion. It wasn't just a number. It was a sentence. A sentence that said their species was finished. "Run the analysis again," Ethan ordered. His voice was calm, but his hands trembled slightly. The operator hesitated. "Sir, this is the 12th time. The result will not change." "Do it again," Ethan repeated. The machine whirred. The same number appeared. 0.9%. Ethan turned away from the screen and walked toward the wide window overlooking space. Beyond it, the blackness was dotted with burning wrecks and distant flashes of light, remnants of the last failed battle. He could almost feel the weight of billions of lost lives pressing against the glass. "We were supposed to protect them," he whispered. Behind him, Captain Laura Hayes, his second-in-command, approached quietly. She was young but battle-hardened, with a scar running down her cheek, a reminder of their last encounter with the alien swarm. "Commander, the fleet is in no condition to fight again," she said softly. "We've lost 70% of our ships. Half of what's left can't even jump to hyperspace." Ethan nodded slowly. "And the colonies?" "All silent," she replied. "The aliens are wiping out everything. Cities, satellites, even the moons. Nothing survives." For a long moment, there was silence. Only the hum of failing machines filled the room. Outside, space looked peaceful, but they all knew death hid behind that calm. Ethan closed his eyes. He remembered Earth, blue oceans, green forests, laughter in the streets. He remembered his daughter running through the park before the evacuation. That memory was now all he had left of home. "When did we stop fighting?" he asked quietly. Laura looked at him, unsure how to answer. "We didn't stop," she said. "We just lost." Ethan turned around sharply. His eyes, tired but burning with stubborn fire, locked onto hers. "No. We lost battles, not the war. Not yet." The crew looked up. For the first time in days, there was a spark of something in his tone. Not hope exactly, but defiance. Ethan walked back to the console and pointed at the holographic map. "The AI says we have less than 1% chance of survival. But what does a machine know about human will?" His voice grew stronger with every word. "It can count ships, weapons, fuel, but it can't count courage. It can't measure what's inside us." Laura almost smiled. The others lifted their heads, listening. Ethan continued, his tone steady. "We built civilizations out of dust. We crossed galaxies with our bare hands. We faced extinction before, and we're still here. So don't tell me about odds." The AI interrupted, emotionless. "Commander Cole, statistical analysis is based on factual data, not emotion." Ethan looked up at the speaker. "Then maybe that's your problem," he said. "You don't understand what it means to be human." He turned back to his team. "We're not dying here. Not today." A quiet murmur spread across the room. Some dared to believe again. But beneath that fragile hope, fear still lingered. The alien swarm, an empire of biomechanical creatures known as the Zytherians, was spreading across every human system. They learned faster than any machine and destroyed faster than any army. Every attempt to stop them had failed. Every fleet sent against them had been crushed. And yet, here stood Ethan Cole, a man with no army left, staring into the darkness as if daring the universe itself to fight him. In the corner of the command room, a small holographic globe blinked red. It was Earth, fading, surrounded by enemy markers. The computer announced, "Enemy advance confirmed. Estimated arrival in Terran orbit, 96 hours." Lara looked at Ethan. 4 days, she said. "That's all we have." Ethan didn't move. His eyes were still on the window. Then slowly he said, "4 days is enough to change everything." Lara frowned. "Change everything? With what, sir? We have no reinforcements, no backup, no plan." Ethan turned back, a faint, dangerous smile forming on his face. "Then we'll make one." The crew exchanged uncertain looks. They had heard speeches before, from generals and leaders who promised victory and delivered death. But Ethan's voice carried something different. It wasn't blind hope, it was raw determination. He wasn't asking them to believe in miracles. He was asking them to fight because that's what humans did when everything else failed. "Send a transmission to all remaining units," he ordered. "Tell them to regroup at Vega Station. This isn't over." Lara hesitated. "Sir, even if they come, it won't be enough." Ethan nodded. "Maybe not. But if we go down, we'll go down fighting. We'll make them remember who we are." He looked once more at the glowing red number on the screen, 0.9%. Slowly, he raised his hand and switched off the display. "From now on," he said, "we stop listening to numbers." Outside, a distant explosion lit up the horizon, another human ship gone. But inside the command room, something had changed. For the first time in a long while, the crew stood a little taller. They didn't have hope yet, but they had purpose. And sometimes, that was enough to start a war no one expected them to win. The AI's voice echoed once more, calm and cold. "Commander, would you like to update mission parameters?" Ethan looked at the dark screen and whispered, "Yes. New mission, survive the impossible." The dim lights of Outpost Vega flickered as if the station itself was struggling to stay alive. Every system was running on emergency power, and the sound of distant alarms echoed through the metallic corridors. The air smelled of burnt circuits and recycled oxygen. It had been 2 days since Commander Ethan Cole made his stand against the impossible numbers. 2 days since he told his people to stop listening to statistics and start believing again. But belief alone could not fix broken ships or refill empty fuel tanks. The crew was tired, running on little sleep and even less hope. Lara Hayes sat in the communication room, her eyes fixed on a screen full of static. She had been trying to restore long-range sensors for hours. The Zytherians had jammed almost every frequency across human space. No messages could get in or out. It was like being blind in the middle of a storm. "Anything." Ethan's voice came from behind her. She turned and shook her head. "Nothing but noise, Commander. If there's anyone out there, we can't hear them." Ethan rubbed his forehead, the weight of responsibility pressing down harder every minute. "Keep trying," he said quietly. "Somewhere, someone must still be fighting." Lara sighed and adjusted the frequency dials one more time. The screen flickered, and for a second, she thought she saw a pattern in the static, a pulse, like a heartbeat. Then it was gone. "Wait," she whispered. She tapped a few more keys. The static returned, louder this time, but beneath it was something else, a faint, repeating signal. Ethan leaned closer. "What is that?" "I don't know yet. It's old, very old. Analog transmission, not digital," Lara said, adjusting the filters. The room went silent except for the faint sound of beeps echoing through the speakers. Beep, pause, beep beep, pause, beep. Ethan's eyes widened. "That's not random. It's a code." Lara nodded. "It's a human distress signal, standard military pattern, but it's coming from outside the communication grid. Where exactly? Sector 9, she said slowly. Ethan froze. Sector 9 had been wiped out months ago, a battlefield turned graveyard. Every ship and station there was reported destroyed. No human life signs had been detected since. That's impossible, he muttered. Sector 9 doesn't exist anymore. Well, something's still there, Lara replied. And it's sending a signal on repeat. Ethan stared at the glowing on the map that marked the source. His instincts told him this was either salvation or a trap. How far? 3 jumps from Vega, Lara answered. But with our damaged engines, it could take a full day. And the alien fleet? Their nearest patrols are still moving toward Earth. We might have a short window. Ethan turned to her, decision already made. Prepare a team. We're going. Lara blinked. Sir, we can't. We barely have enough fuel for a return trip. And if it's a trap, then we'll know, Ethan interrupted. If there's even one human out there, we can't ignore it. He walked toward the door. Get the jump coordinates ready. The command crew exchanged uneasy glances, but no one argued. Everyone knew Ethan's tone meant there was no turning back. Within hours, the ship Artemis, one of the last surviving destroyers, was ready to depart. Its engines hummed weakly as the crew loaded supplies and checked systems. Outside the docking bay window, the darkness of space awaited, cold, silent, and filled with unseen eyes. As the ship detached from the station, Lara stood beside Ethan in the cockpit. Do you really think it's a human signal? She asked quietly. Ethan looked out at the stars. I don't know, he said. But if it is, we owe it to them to find out. The jump drive powered up, and the stars stretched into long lines of light. The ship vanished into hyperspace. Hours later, they emerged in the middle of a dead sector. The view outside was horrifying, thousands of wrecked ships floating in silence. Human and Zytherian alike, locked in eternal stillness. Some still burned faintly, like dying candles. My God, Lara whispered. This was a massacre. Ethan's eyes scanned the darkness. Keep your sensors active. That signal should be somewhere near the old research outpost. The beeping started again, louder now, clearer. The source was nearby. They followed it through the graveyard of twisted metal until they saw it, an old human station, its structure cracked and scorched, but still somehow intact. The nameplate on its hull flickered weakly, Outpost Helios. Helios Station, Ethan murmured. It was destroyed in the first wave. How is it still transmitting? Maybe it's an automated distress beacon, Lara said. Or maybe... Ethan finished the thought for her. Maybe someone's still alive. They brought the ship closer, scanning for energy signatures. Minimal power detected, Lara reported. No movement. Atmosphere unstable, but there's oxygen. Prepare a boarding team, Ethan said. He strapped on his helmet, his voice calm but determined. We're going in. Minutes later, they entered the silent halls of Helios Station. Dust floated through the air like ghosts. Everything was dark except for the flickering emergency lights. The team moved carefully, their footsteps echoing through the empty corridors. No signs of life, Lara said. Thermal scanners show nothing. They reached the command room and stopped. A holographic projector was still active in the center of the room, repeating a message. Ethan stepped forward and activated it fully. A flickering image appeared, a woman in a torn lab coat, speaking in a broken voice. If anyone is receiving this, this is Dr. Mira Cade, lead researcher of Project Rebirth. The aliens have breached the station. I don't know if anyone will survive, but if humans ever find this message, you must finish what I started. The key to survival isn't firepower, it's evolution. The message ended in static. Lara's heart pounded. Project Rebirth? What is that? Ethan stared at the frozen hologram, his mind racing. I don't know, he said. But she believed it could save humanity. Suddenly, the ship's comms crackled. "Commander, we've got movement outside," the pilot's voice shouted. "Multiple signals, they're closing fast." Lara looked at Ethan, fear in her eyes. "The Zytherians?" "Who else?" he said grimly. "Get ready to move. We're not dying here." They ran back toward the docking bay as the distant sound of metal striking metal echoed through the station. The aliens were coming. As they boarded the ship, Ethan looked back once at the flickering message left by Dr. Mira. "Finish what I started," her voice repeated faintly through the static. Ethan whispered to himself, "We will." The ship blasted away from Helios just as explosions tore through the station. From the safety of space, they watched the structure collapse into fire and silence. Lara turned to Ethan. "Was it worth it, sir?" He nodded slowly. "More than worth it. Because now, we know there's still a chance." He looked out at the stars, eyes hard and focused. "And I don't care if it's 1% or less, I'm not giving up until we find out what Project Rebirth really is." Outside, the wreckage of Helios drifted silently, but deep within the destroyed station, a small red light blinked, one that no one noticed. The message had been sent again, this time to a new destination. Somewhere far away, something had heard it. The stars drifted silently around the Artemis as it moved through the wreckage of forgotten battles. Fragments of metal and frozen bodies floated past the windows like the ghosts of a war that refused to end. Every few minutes, the hull groaned as small pieces of debris scraped against it. The crew sat in uneasy silence, each lost in their own thoughts. The discovery of Dr. Mira Cade's message had changed everything. Project Rebirth, a name that sounded like hope wrapped in mystery. No one knew what it truly meant, but it had given them something they hadn't felt in months: purpose. Commander Ethan Cole stood at the front of the command deck, staring into the darkness. He had replayed Myra's message 100 times in his mind, trying to understand the meaning behind her words. The key to survival isn't firepower, it's evolution. What kind of evolution? What had she been working on that the aliens feared so much? His thoughts were interrupted by Lara Hayes as she walked up beside him. "We've finished analyzing the data we recovered," she said, handing him a tablet. "There's a set of coordinates hidden in the transmission code." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Coordinates to where?" "Earth," she replied softly. The word hung in the air like a forgotten prayer. Earth, their home, the cradle of humanity. It had been declared lost 6 months ago when the Zytherians unleashed their planet-burner weapons. Every signal from Earth stopped. Every survivor ship was destroyed before reaching orbit. No human had dared to return since. "That can't be right," Ethan said. "Earth is gone." Lara looked down at the tablet. "Maybe not completely. If Mira sent those coordinates, maybe she was trying to tell us something is still there." Ethan turned to the pilot. "Set a course for Earth." The pilot hesitated. "Sir, if the aliens detect us, then we'll find out if the human race still knows how to hide," Ethan interrupted. The engines roared to life, and the Artemis changed course. The stars stretched into white lines as the ship jumped toward the one place they thought they'd never see again. Hours passed in silence. The hum of the ship was the only sound, but beneath that hum was tension, fear of what waited ahead. Lara watched Ethan from across the deck. He looked calm, but she could see the storm in his eyes. "You really think something survived on Earth?" she asked. Ethan didn't answer immediately. He looked out the window, lost in thought. "I think the universe doesn't waste miracles," he said finally. "If Mira believed there was still hope, then that's enough for me." When they emerged from hyperspace, the entire crew fell silent. Before them was Earth, broken but still turning. Huge scars covered the continents, blackened from orbital strikes. The once blue oceans shimmered with strange colors, and what was once the proud ring of satellites was now a field of dead metal. But there was something else, faint energy readings coming from the planet's surface. "Picking up a signal," Lara said. "It's weak, but definitely human." Source is somewhere near the ruins of Geneva. Bring us into orbit, Ethan said. The ship descended slowly through the atmosphere. The clouds were thick with ash and dust. Lightning flashed through the gray sky. When they finally broke through, the view below took their breath away. Where cities once stood were endless ruins. Roads were cracked and overgrown. The rivers ran dark with pollution. And yet, in the middle of all that death, a single tower still stood, the Geneva Research Facility. Its roof was shattered, but faint lights blinked deep within it. That's where the signal is coming from, Lara said. But there's something else, multiple energy signatures moving around the area. Aliens? Ethan asked. Could be, she replied. But they're not showing the usual patterns. Ethan narrowed his eyes. Prepare the landing team. I'm going down there. Sir, it's too dangerous, Lara protested. We don't even know what's on the surface. That's exactly why I'm going, Ethan said firmly. Project Rebirth started here. If there's even a chance Mira left something behind, we need it. The ship descended into the ruins of Geneva, engines kicking up clouds of ash. The landing ramp opened with a hiss, and Ethan stepped out with a small squad of soldiers. The air was heavy and smelled of smoke and decay. Buildings lay in ruins, twisted metal and shattered glass reflecting the pale light of a dying sun. Every step they took echoed through the empty streets. This place feels haunted, one soldier muttered. Ethan looked around. It is, he said quietly. Haunted by what we lost. They made their way to the base of the research tower. The front doors had been blown apart, but inside, parts of the facility were still intact. Power hummed weakly through the walls. How is there still electricity? Lara asked as she examined a control panel. Backup reactors, maybe, Ethan said. Mira must have planned for the worst. They moved deeper into the facility, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. Strange symbols and equations were scribbled on the walls. Myra's handwriting, messy but brilliant. Look at this, Lara whispered. She was working on something massive, quantum-level restructuring, genetic algorithms. It's beyond anything we've ever seen. Ethan stopped in front of a large sealed door. A faint blue light pulsed from its edges. Whatever she was building, it's behind this door. He placed his hand on the access panel, and to his surprise, it responded, scanning him with a soft chime. The door slid open with a hiss, revealing a chamber filled with glowing pods. Inside each pod was a humanoid figure. Not alien, not machine, but something in between. My God, Lara breathed. What are they? Ethan stepped closer. They're human, he said slowly. Or they used to be. Each pod contained a person in suspended animation. Pale skin, faint circuits under their skin, their hearts beating slowly. Project Rebirth, Ethan whispered. She wasn't building a weapon, she was building a new kind of human. Suddenly, the power flickered. The ground trembled. From the corridor behind them came a metallic shriek, the kind they all knew too well. Zytherians, Lara said, her voice tight. They've found us. Defensive positions. Ethan ordered. The squad raised their weapons as shapes moved in the shadows, insect-like machines with glowing eyes, crawling along the walls. Gunfire erupted. Energy bolts lit the dark hallway. The aliens swarmed, their claws tearing through steel. Ethan fired, shouting over the chaos. Lara, get the data from the main console. We can't let this research die here. Lara ran to the control terminal, downloading files as sparks rained down around her. Almost done, she shouted. One of the soldiers screamed as a Zytherian struck him down. Ethan grabbed a grenade and threw it, blasting a hole in the wall. Go. Now. The team ran through the breach and back toward the exit. The tower shook violently, flames spreading through the corridors. As they reached the surface, the entire structure began to collapse. The Artemis lifted off from the ground just as the tower exploded behind them, sending a massive fireball into the sky. On board, Lara handed Ethan the data drive, her hands trembling. We got it, she said. Ethan looked down at it, small, glowing faintly in his hand. "Dr. Mira," he whispered. "You were right. The key wasn't firepower. It was evolution." The Artemis drifted in the dark between stars, silent and tense. Every light on the bridge was dimmed, and the crew spoke in whispers as if afraid the enemy might hear them across the void. The data they had recovered from Earth sat inside a small drive on the command table. It was no bigger than a coin, but Ethan Cole knew it might hold the fate of humanity inside it. 4 hours, Laura Hayes worked to decrypt the files. Streams of symbols and numbers filled the screen, each one unlocking a new layer of Dr. Mira Cade's research. Ethan stood behind her, watching, trying to stay calm. "Anything?" he asked. Laura exhaled slowly. "Almost. Mira used an encryption system far beyond anything I've seen. But I think I found the core files." The screen flickered, and suddenly Myra's face appeared, a recorded message, clearer than the last one they saw. Her voice was calm but filled with urgency. "If you're watching this, then the Zytherians have found Earth. You must understand, Project Rebirth isn't a weapon. It's humanity's next step. The aliens evolve through machines. We must evolve through something greater, the merging of human instinct and artificial precision. I've built the prototype deep beneath Helios Station, in Chamber 0. If it can be activated, it can rewrite the genetic code of an entire species." The message glitched, then ended abruptly. Laura leaned back in her chair, stunned. "She created something that could change what it means to be human," she said quietly. Ethan crossed his arms. "A weapon that doesn't kill, it transforms." He paced across the deck, thinking. If Myra's prototype still exists under Helios, we need it. "Commander," the pilot interrupted. "Helios Station was destroyed when we escaped. There's nothing left." Ethan turned sharply. "Are you sure?" The explosion was massive. No life signs, no structures. Just debris. Ethan didn't respond right away. His eyes drifted toward the stars outside the viewport. "Then we find what's left," he said. "There's always something left." Laura frowned. "Sir, returning to Helios means entering alien territory again. They'll be watching that sector. Then we'll go where they're not watching," Ethan said. "Plot a silent approach. Minimal power. No transmissions." The crew exchanged uneasy glances but began preparing for the jump. Hours later, the Artemis re-entered the ruins of Sector 9. The once bright system was now a graveyard of drifting ships and scorched planets. The remains of Helios Station floated in pieces, surrounded by glowing debris. The entire place was eerily still. "I don't see how anything could have survived this," Laura murmured. Ethan stared at the wreckage, determination hardening in his eyes. "The signal we found before was hidden under layers of debris. Mira was smart. If she hid her message that well, maybe she hid the chamber too." The ship's sensors scanned the remains, searching for any sign of energy. At first, nothing appeared. Then a faint blip pulsed on the screen, a power signature deep inside the asteroid field near where Helios used to be. "There," Ethan said, pointing. "That's it." "Commander, that location is unstable," the pilot warned. "Gravitational currents could tear the ship apart." Ethan smiled faintly. "Then we'll be gentle." They maneuvered through the wreckage, dodging spinning metal and collapsed hulls. The Artemis hull creaked under the pressure. Finally, they reached a small fragment of the station still intact. The readings were weak but steady. "There's a sealed chamber inside," Laura reported. "It's using a self-contained power core." Ethan nodded. "We're going in." He led a small team in EVA suits through the airlock. The silence of space surrounded them as they floated toward the debris. Their flashlights cut through the darkness, revealing pieces of human technology mixed with alien wreckage. After several minutes of searching, they found a circular door half buried under twisted metal. Strange markings glowed faintly on its surface. Myra's security code. Laura placed her gloved hand on the panel. The symbols shifted, scanning her. With a hiss, the door opened. A tunnel of light extended inward, leading to a small, intact laboratory sealed off from the destruction outside. Inside, everything was preserved, clean, untouched by the chaos. In the center of the room stood a single pod, humming quietly. Ethan floated closer and stared through the glass. Inside was a human, or something close to one. Its body shimmered faintly, veins glowing with blue light. It looked peaceful, almost asleep. "Is that a clone?" Lara asked. "Not a clone," Ethan said softly. "An evolution." A small console next to the pod activated automatically. Myra's hologram appeared again, this time more stable. "If you found this chamber, then you've reached the final phase of Project Rebirth," she said. "The being inside this pod carries a new genetic sequence, one that can adapt instantly to any environment or threat. It's part human, part synthetic, and completely self-aware. If awakened, it can spread its genetic pattern through direct contact, transforming others like it." Ethan's eyes widened. "She made a living catalyst," he whispered. "A human who can rebuild humanity from its own DNA." Myra's hologram continued. "But beware. The process is unstable. If activated prematurely, it could destroy the host, or worse, infect uncontrollably." The message ended, leaving only the soft hum of the pod. Lara looked at Ethan. "Sir, we can't just activate it. We don't even understand what it is." Ethan stared at the sleeping figure. "Mira trusted us to finish what she started. If this is humanity's last hope, then we don't have a choice." Before Lara could argue, the ground shook violently. Their comms crackled. "Commander! Zytherian ships approaching fast. They've detected our position." Ethan clenched his jaw. "Of course they have." He turned to Lara. "Grab the pod. We're taking it with us." "What? It's huge. We don't even know if we can move it safely." "Then move it carefully," Ethan said. Together, they detached the pod from its cradle, securing it to a gravlift. As they made their way back to the ship, explosions rocked the debris field. The aliens had arrived, their ships glowing red like burning comets. Laser fire cut through the darkness. "Go! Go!" Ethan shouted. The team pushed forward, dodging falling wreckage. One of the crew members was hit by debris and spun off into the void, disappearing. Ethan didn't stop. The Artemis opened its hangar bay doors just in time. The team rushed inside as the ship's shields flared under enemy fire. "We've got it!" Lara shouted. "Lift off now." The engines roared to life, and the ship shot away from the wreckage. The aliens pursued, but Ethan ordered the pilot to dive into the nearby gas field. Lightning and radiation filled the clouds, disrupting enemy sensors. For tense minutes, they flew blind, chased by flashes of light. Then, silence. "We lost them," the pilot said, breathing heavily. Everyone on the bridge exhaled in relief. Ethan turned toward the pod secured in the cargo bay, glowing faintly in the dim light. "We have it," he said quietly. "Myra's creation, humanity's last card." Lara looked at him with worry. "And what do we do now?" Ethan stared at the sleeping figure inside the pod. "We wake it up," he said. "It's time to see if the human race can survive its own evolution." Outside, lightning flashed across the swirling gas clouds, illuminating the ship as it drifted onward into the unknown, carrying the one thing that might save them all, or doom them forever. The Artemis floated in deep space, hidden within the swirling clouds of a red gas giant. Lightning flickered across the storm outside, casting eerie flashes of light into the ship's corridors. The crew had been silent for hours, their eyes drawn again and again to the pod resting in the cargo bay. Inside it, the strange human-like figure lay still, bathed in a faint blue glow. It looked peaceful, almost too peaceful, like the calm before a storm. Commander Ethan Cole stood before the pod, his reflection mirrored in the glass. He had seen weapons, monsters, and miracles during this war, but nothing like this. This wasn't a machine or a soldier. It was something new. Something that might change everything. Laura Hayes entered quietly, holding a datapad. I've gone through Myra's research again, she said. Her notes are incomplete, but she mentioned a catalyst code, something that needs to be entered before the subject can awaken. Ethan looked at her. Did she say what happens after? Laura hesitated. Not exactly. She said the host would learn from the nearest human mind and adapt. It's supposed to understand what humanity needs most and become that. Ethan frowned. Sounds like a gamble. It's more than a gamble, Laura said. If it misreads the input, it could turn hostile or unstable. There's no way to predict what it will become. Ethan nodded slowly, his gaze returning to the sleeping figure. Then it's not just a weapon. It's a choice. Outside the cargo bay, the ship hummed softly. The rest of the crew was growing restless. Rumors spread that the aliens were tracking them again. Supplies were low, and morale was even lower. Every man and woman on board knew they were running out of time. In the control room, the communications officer called out, "Commander, we're picking up something, a long-range pulse scan." Ethan entered. Alien. Yes, sir. Multiple signals. They're sweeping the gas field. They'll find us soon. Laura followed behind him. We can't run, she said. Engines are still unstable from the last jump. If we try to move now, we'll overheat. Ethan looked at the holographic map. Red dots appeared everywhere, enemy ships closing in from multiple directions. How long do we have? Maybe 20 minutes, the officer said. After that, we're surrounded. The silence in the room grew heavy. Ethan looked at the pod's data on the screen. If we wake it, can it help us? Laura shook her head. We don't know what it will do. It might save us. It might destroy us. If we don't wake it, Ethan said, we die anyway. He looked around at his crew, tired faces, eyes full of fear and loyalty. We've come this far. We found Myra's creation. She believed in it. Maybe it's time we do too. Laura stepped closer. Commander, if we activate it, there's no turning back. Once it begins the process, it could change everything, even us. Ethan met her eyes. Then let it. Humanity's been dying piece by piece. Maybe it's time to become something stronger. The order hung in the air like thunder. Prepare the activation sequence, he said. The crew moved quickly, each person knowing this could be their final act. In the cargo bay, cables connected the pod to the ship's power core. The room dimmed as energy flowed into the chamber. Laura stood at the console, fingers hovering over the controls. Final confirmation, she said. Catalyst code ready for input. What's the code? Ethan asked. Mira left it blank, Laura replied. She said it must be chosen by whoever awakens the host, a single phrase that defines humanity. Ethan thought for a moment, his eyes distant. He remembered the number that started all this, 0.9%. The cold voice of the AI saying they had almost no chance. He remembered the faces of the people who died believing in something better. Slowly he said, input the phrase, we don't quit. Laura nodded and entered the words. The console beeped. The pod's glow intensified, filling the room with blinding blue light. The figure inside began to move. Its eyes opened, bright silver, reflecting everything around them. Alarms blared as the ship systems fluctuated. Energy levels rising fast, the engineer shouted over the comms. It's draining the main reactor. Hold it steady, Ethan ordered. The figure inside the pod sat up slowly, its movement graceful and deliberate. When it spoke, its voice echoed like two tones layered together, human and something else. Who awakened me? Ethan stepped forward. Commander Ethan Cole, Human Fleet. The figure looked at him curiously. You brought me into existence. Why? Because humanity is dying, Ethan said. Dr. Mira Cade created you to save us. The being tilted its head. Save you. From what? From extinction, Lara said. The Zytherians, they're coming. For a moment, the being was silent. Then it looked around, eyes glowing brighter. I can feel them, it said. They are near. Can you stop them? Ethan asked. The being looked at its hands. Blue light shimmered across its skin. Perhaps. But every action has a cost. What cost? Ethan asked. If I destroy them, the being said slowly, I may change everything that makes you human. My energy is tied to your DNA. When I use it, I will rewrite life itself. Lara's voice trembled. You mean, it could change us too? Yes, the being replied. You will survive, but you will not be the same. Ethan stood silent for a long time. Around him, the crew waited for his decision. Outside, enemy ships closed in, their red lights glowing through the storm. He looked at Lara. If we do nothing, we die human. If we act, we might live, just not as the same species. Lara's eyes filled with fear. What if we lose what makes us us? Ethan turned toward the being. What if that's what evolution really means, letting go of who we were to become who we must be? He faced the console again. Do it, he said. The being closed its eyes. Blue energy surged from its body, spreading through the ship like lightning. The lights flickered, the walls trembled, and every system overloaded. The crew cried out as the glow passed through them. It wasn't pain, it was something else, like being touched by raw creation. Outside, the storm parted. The Zytherian ships entered the field, firing wildly. But before their weapons could strike, the energy from the Artemis expanded outward, a shockwave of blinding light. Alien ships froze mid-flight, their hulls twisting and dissolving into dust. The wave spread across the system, erasing every trace of the enemy. Then silence. Inside the ship, the light faded. The being stood weakly, its glow dimming. Ethan gasped, catching his breath. What happened? They're gone, Lara whispered, looking at the scanner. All of them. Ethan turned to the being. You saved us. The being smiled faintly. I didn't save you, Commander. I changed you. Its body shimmered, breaking apart into thousands of tiny sparks that floated into the air and vanished. Ethan looked down at his hands. Faint blue light pulsed under his skin. Around him, the crew stared at one another, realizing they were glowing too. Humanity had survived, but not as it was before. Lara looked at Ethan, her voice barely a whisper. What are we now? Ethan stared out at the silent stars. The next chapter, he said. The unthinkable has just begun. The silence after the storm felt unreal. The Artemis floated quietly through space, surrounded by the faint shimmer of energy that still lingered from the being's final act. The crew stood on the bridge, their eyes fixed on the fading glow beyond the windows. For a long moment, no one spoke. They were alive. The Zytherians were gone. But something had changed, deeply, permanently. Ethan looked down at his hands again. The faint blue veins still pulsed beneath his skin, glowing softly like veins of light. His breathing felt different, smoother, deeper. Every sound, every heartbeat on the ship seemed sharper, clearer. He could feel the ship itself, like it was an extension of him. Lara was staring at her reflection in the glass, her eyes wide. Commander, she whispered. Look at us. Her irises had turned a pale silver, reflecting the dim light like mirrors. Around them, the rest of the crew looked the same, transformed but still human in form. It's like we've been rewired, the engineer said quietly. Our bodies, our senses, everything feels stronger. Ethan nodded slowly. The being said we would survive, just not as the same species. It wasn't lying. Lara turned to him. What are we now? Ethan didn't answer right away. He looked at the stars, their light flickering in the distance. Humanity evolved, he said softly. Maybe this is what Mira wanted all along. Before anyone could reply, the ship's alarm broke the silence. The communication officer shouted, "Commander! We're detecting a signal, not human, not Cytherian either." Ethan's head snapped around. "Show me." A holographic image appeared on the console, a faint pulse of energy coming from the edge of the system. It was rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. Lara frowned. Could it be a distress beacon? "Or a warning," Ethan said. "Track it." The pulse grew stronger, faster. The ship's sensors began to distort. "Something's coming through," the officer said nervously. The air on the bridge shimmered, and a strange voice filled the room. Deep, layered, almost mechanical. "Human vessel detected. Identify." Ethan stepped forward. "This is Commander Ethan Cole of the Artemis." "Who are you?" The voice paused. Then it replied, "We are the Watchers. You have awakened the catalyst. The balance has been broken." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Lara whispered, "Watchers? Who are they?" The voice continued. "The catalyst was never meant to be activated. It was the failsafe of creation, the seed of the next age. You have altered your kind beyond control." Ethan clenched his fists. "We did what we had to. The Cytherians would have destroyed us." "And now you will destroy yourselves," the voice replied. "Evolution cannot be forced. The transformation is unstable. The new humans will either ascend or collapse." Static filled the air, and the signal vanished. For a moment, no one spoke. Lara turned to Ethan, fear creeping into her voice. "Commander, if it's telling the truth, this transformation could kill us." Ethan looked at his crew. "We don't know that yet. And we've faced worse." "Sir," the engineer interrupted, "I'm reading fluctuations in our life signs. It's small, but everyone's body temperature is rising. Cells are mutating at a rapid rate." Lara looked horrified. The Watchers were right. The change isn't stable. Ethan stood tall. "Then we find a way to stabilize it. Myra's data might have the answer." They rushed to the lab where Myra's final files were stored. Lara worked quickly, searching through the encrypted folders. The data was incomplete, fragmented by time and corruption. Then she found something, a file marked Omega Protocol. She opened it. Myra's voice played once again, calm and steady. "If you are seeing this, then Project Rebirth has been activated. The host has done its work. Humanity will now face its final test. The transformation will not hold unless the energy balance is restored. The catalyst must return to its origin, the core star." The message ended abruptly. "Core star." Lara repeated. "She means Helios Prime, the system's central star." Ethan understood instantly. "The energy we released disrupted the system's core. To survive, we have to give it back." "You're saying we need to return to the same place where the Cytherians died?" the engineer asked. "That's suicide." Ethan shook his head. "No. It's survival." The crew exchanged worried looks, but none refused. They had followed him through death before. They would do it again. The Artemis turned toward the blazing light of Helios Prime. As the ship neared the star, systems began to fail. Radiation levels soared. The air grew hot, and the hull creaked under pressure. Ethan stood firm. "Divert all remaining power to shields." "Shields won't hold long," Lara said, her hands trembling on the console. "They don't have to," Ethan replied. "Just enough to finish this." They reached the edge of the star's corona, an ocean of fire and plasma swirling like a living storm. Ethan could feel the energy through his skin, calling to him, like the star itself was alive. "Now," he said. "Release the catalyst energy." Lara hesitated. "If we do that, we might not survive." Ethan smiled faintly. "We already aren't the people we were. This is our second chance. Let's make it count." She activated the sequence. The ship's core began to glow, pulsing with the same blue light that had transformed them. The energy surged outward, connecting with the star's magnetic field. For a brief moment, the entire system lit up. The light consumed everything: the ship, the crew, the darkness. Then silence. When the light faded, the Artemis floated again, battered but intact. The heat was gone. The radiation levels dropped. Lara gasped. It worked. The readings are stable. Our bodies, they've stopped mutating. Ethan exhaled deeply, relief washing over him. We gave the star what it needed, and it gave us balance. The crew cheered quietly, their fear turning into hope. Outside, the sun burned brighter, its light golden and pure. The transformation had stabilized not just them but the entire system. For the first time in months, Ethan smiled. Humanity had survived its rebirth. But as the celebration began, Lara's console beeped softly. "Commander," she said, "there's something new." "What is it?" "Another signal," she said slowly. "It's coming from beyond the system, millions of kilometers away." Ethan frowned. "Is it the Watchers again?" Lara shook her head. "No. It's human. Multiple ships. Broadcasting from deep space. Coordinates unknown." Ethan's eyes widened. Survivors. The thought filled the bridge with renewed life. He looked around at his crew, the first of a new kind of human, forged in fire and light. "Set course for the signal," he ordered. "Let's bring humanity back together." As the Artemis turned toward the stars, the crew watched the glowing sun fade behind them. They didn't know what waited out there: new worlds, new dangers, or perhaps new gods. But for the first time in a long time, hope burned brighter than fear. Ethan looked at the stars ahead and whispered, "We beat the odds once. Let's do it again." And with that, the Artemis vanished into the deep unknown, carrying the last survivors of the old world, and the first children of the new one. The Artemis glided silently through the black sea of space, its engines burning softly like blue fireflies in the void. The crew had been traveling for days, following the faint signal that echoed across the stars. Each pulse of it felt familiar, human, desperate, hopeful. It was proof that they weren't alone. Inside the ship, the atmosphere was calm but heavy with anticipation. The transformation had stabilized, yet its effects lingered. The crew's senses had become sharper, their reflexes faster. They could communicate without words sometimes, sensing each other's thoughts like whispers in the back of their minds. It was strange but comforting, like evolution had given them a new language made of emotion and instinct. Commander Ethan Cole sat in his chair on the bridge, staring at the holographic star map. The signal grew stronger every hour. "How far?" he asked quietly. Lara Hayes looked up from her console. 3 light days at our current speed," she said. "But the signal pattern is strange." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Strange how?" "It keeps repeating the same word," she replied. "Home." The word hung in the air, soft but powerful. It had been so long since any of them had heard it spoken with meaning. Home, a word that once meant Earth, now reduced to a dream buried under dust and memory. "Keep tracking it," Ethan said. "If someone's calling for home, we'll find them." As the ship sailed onward, the crew settled into uneasy silence. Nights passed like slow-moving shadows. Ethan spent most of his time in the observation deck, watching the stars drift by. He thought about what they had lost: their planet, their people, their humanity. Yet here they were, alive in a form no one could have imagined. Sometimes he could still hear Mira Cade's voice in his mind, calm and resolute: "Evolution is never gentle. It's survival by change." He wondered if she had known what they would become: not gods, not monsters, but something in between. On the 5th day, the signal abruptly changed. The pulse became faster, more frantic. "Commander!" Lara shouted from the bridge. "Something's happening. The signal just spiked." Ethan rushed in. "Show me." The holographic map zoomed in on a sector filled with faint debris fields and drifting asteroids. At the center, a small blue light flickered like a heartbeat. That's it, Laura said. The source. Bring us in slowly, Ethan ordered. The Artemis entered the sector, weaving through the floating remains of old ships. The wrecks were human, destroyed long ago in battles that had faded from memory. Their flags and insignias still clung to the hulls, ghostly reminders of the past. This was one of our fleets, Laura whispered. The Exodus group. Ethan nodded. The ones who left before Earth fell. As they neared the signal, the blue light resolved into a massive structure, half station, half ship. It was ancient but still alive, surrounded by faint energy fields. It's a colony vessel, Laura said, her voice full of disbelief. How is it still functioning? Only one way to find out, Ethan said. Prepare docking sequence. The Artemis locked onto the structure's magnetic field and eased into a docking position. When the airlock hissed open, a rush of stale, recycled air greeted them. The lights inside flickered weakly. Ethan led the team through narrow corridors covered in dust and frost. Power's low, Laura said, checking her scanner. Life support's minimal but active. Someone kept this place alive. They turned a corner and froze. A group of people stood there, humans, unmodified, pale and thin but alive. The moment of silence that followed felt like eternity. Then one of them stepped forward, trembling. Are you from Earth? He asked. Ethan hesitated. We were. A long time ago. The man stared at their glowing veins and silver eyes. What happened to you? Ethan's voice was calm but steady. We survived. The man smiled weakly, tears filling his eyes. You found us, he said. We thought we were the last. Laura stepped forward. How long have you been here? 20 years, the man replied. We lost contact with everyone. The Zytherians destroyed most of the fleet. Only this station remained. He looked at Ethan. You don't know how many nights we waited for a signal, for anyone. Lara's face softened. You're safe now. The war's over. The Zytherians are gone. The man's eyes widened. Gone? How? Ethan looked away. It's a long story. They followed the survivors deeper into the station. There were maybe 100 of them, living in dimly lit rooms powered by salvaged generators. Children ran quietly through the corridors, their laughter weak but real. It was humanity in its purest form, fragile yet enduring. We call this place Haven, the man said. It's all we have left. Not anymore, Ethan said. You're not alone now. But beneath his calm tone, a shadow of worry grew. The unmodified humans stared at them with awe and fear. Whispers spread through the crowd. They glow. They're not like us. What are they? Later, in private, Laura confronted Ethan. They're afraid of us, she said. They see us as something else, not human. Ethan sighed. Can you blame them? We barely understand what we've become ourselves. Then what now? She asked. We can't stay here forever. Sooner or later, they'll want answers. Ethan walked to the window and stared at the stars. We give them hope. That's what matters. And if hope turns to fear? Laura said softly. Ethan didn't answer. The next morning, the survivors gathered in the central hall to hear their story. Ethan stood before them, surrounded by his crew. He told them everything: the fall of Earth, the war, the creation of Project Rebirth, the awakening of the Catalyst, and the transformation that saved them all. When he finished, silence filled the hall. The leader of Haven, an older woman named Captain Reese, stepped forward. You say you saved humanity, she said slowly. But what you've become, is it still human? Ethan met her eyes. Maybe not in the way we were. But our hearts, our memories, our will to survive, those are still human. That's what matters. Reese studied him for a long moment, then nodded. If you truly believe that, then maybe this is our second beginning. The crowd murmured softly, a mixture of fear and curiosity. Then a small child stepped out from the group and walked up to Ethan. She looked at his glowing hand, then touched it gently. "You're warm," she said with a smile. The room went quiet. Then, slowly, others began to approach, one by one, curiosity overcoming fear. Ethan knelt beside the child and smiled. "We're not here to replace you," he said. "We're here to make sure humanity never fades again." The moment felt fragile, beautiful, like the dawn of a new world. But deep inside, Ethan knew this peace would not last forever. Evolution never stopped moving, and the universe was full of things that watched and waited. As the lights of Haven flickered back to life and laughter filled the corridors again, Ethan looked out at the endless stars beyond. He could almost hear Myra's voice whispering through the silence. The unthinkable was never the end. It was only the beginning. The new dawn for humanity began not with sunlight, but with starlight. The Artemis and the Haven station drifted together in silent orbit, two relics of a war that had ended the old world and given birth to a new one. Days passed quietly as the two groups, the evolved and the unmodified, tried to coexist. At first, there was fear. The glowing veins, the silver eyes, the faint hum of energy around Ethan's crew, they reminded the survivors too much of the weapons that had destroyed everything before. But fear slowly turned into curiosity, and curiosity into fragile trust. The children were the first to adapt. They played with the Artemis crew, unafraid of the differences. They saw the blue light under the skin not as something alien, but as something beautiful. It was the adults who struggled most. They had built their lives on survival and caution, and now faced something they couldn't understand, a future that didn't fit into the rules of the past. Ethan Cole spent his days walking between both groups, trying to bridge the gap. His mind worked faster now, his senses sharper, but his heart remained heavy. Leadership had never felt this lonely. Lara often joined him, her expression calm but her eyes always searching the stars. "They're learning to accept us," she said one evening as they stood by the viewport. "But they still don't trust what we've become." Ethan nodded. "Trust takes time. Mira changed the world in a way no one can undo. Maybe this is how we earn it back, by proving that what she created can protect, not destroy." Lara sighed. "And if what we've become is only the beginning? What if evolution doesn't stop here?" Ethan looked at his reflection in the glass, the faint glow beneath his skin, the pulse of something greater than human in his veins. "Then we make sure it moves in the right direction," he said. The peace was interrupted a few days later when alarms rang across Haven's control room. The officers scrambled to their stations. "Commander!" Lara shouted. "Something's approaching fast." Ethan rushed in. "Alien!" "No," she said, her voice uncertain. "It's human, or it used to be." On the holographic screen, a dark shape appeared, emerging from the void like a shadow. It was massive, far larger than any ship they had seen before. Its hull was scarred and twisted, covered in strange glowing veins similar to their own. "What in the world?" Lara whispered. The scanner flickered. "It's broadcasting an old Earth code," the comms officer said. "Designation, the Prometheus." Ethan froze. The name was Legend, the first ship that had gone missing before the war, commanded by Dr. Mira Cade herself. "Open a channel," he said. Static filled the room, followed by a voice. Calm, familiar, haunting. "Ethan Cole," it said. "If you're hearing this, then you've done what I hoped. Humanity has survived." "Mira," Ethan said, stunned. The voice continued. "This message is automated. I knew you would awaken the catalyst. I knew the world would change. But I didn't know how far evolution would go. The Prometheus carries the final stage of Project Rebirth, the Genesis core. With it, humanity can build again, not as what we were, but as what we are becoming. But be warned. The core must never fall into fear's hands. Only unity can activate it. If divided, it will destroy everything." The message ended. Silence filled the bridge. "The Genesis core," Lara said slowly. "She left us one final gift." Ethan stared at the enormous ship drifting outside. "Or one final test," he said. They launched a shuttle to board the Prometheus. The interior was vast and eerily silent. The corridors were lined with vines of blue energy pulsing like veins through the metal walls. At the center of the ship was a chamber glowing with soft light, the Genesis core. It was a sphere of energy suspended in the air, its surface rippling like liquid glass. It felt alive. "This thing," Lara said in awe, "it's like the heart of a world." "Mira built it to restart civilization," Ethan said. "But she warned us, if we can't stand together, it'll destroy us." Behind them, footsteps echoed. Captain Reese and several of Haven's unmodified humans entered, their faces tense. "We've heard enough," Reese said. "That thing doesn't belong to anyone. It's too dangerous." "It's the only way to rebuild," Ethan replied. "The core can terraform, heal, and create. It can turn dead worlds into living ones. We could start over." "At what cost?" Reese snapped. "You said the catalyst nearly killed you. What if this one finishes the job?" Tension filled the air. The evolved crew stood on one side, the unmodified on the other. The light from the core reflected on their faces, one side glowing blue, the other pale and uncertain. "We can't go back to what we were," Ethan said. "But we can build something new, together." Reese shook her head. "Together. You're not human anymore." Her words cut deep, but Ethan didn't flinch. "Then maybe humanity needs to mean something more." For a long moment, no one moved. Then a child's voice broke the silence. It was the same little girl who had touched Ethan's hand days ago. She stepped between the two groups and placed her small hand on the glowing core. "It's warm," she whispered. "Like both of you." The core responded, pulsing brighter. The light spread outward, filling the chamber with a gentle hum. Ethan looked around in awe. "It's reacting to her," Lara said. "It's responding to emotion, to unity." Slowly, Reese stepped forward, her anger softening. "If this thing can see the good in us," she said quietly, "then maybe it deserves a chance." She placed her hand beside the child's. Ethan followed, then Lara, then the rest of the crew. The light intensified until it filled every corner of the ship. The Genesis core flared, sending waves of golden blue energy through the walls. Outside, the Prometheus came alive. Its engines glowed, its systems reactivated. The core's power spread across the sector, touching Haven, the Artemis, and the surrounding space. Planets long dead began to shimmer with new atmospheres. The black void turned golden with life. When the light finally faded, the crew stood in silence. The core now floated quietly, dim but steady, its work complete. "It worked," Lara whispered. "It actually worked." Ethan looked out the window. In the distance, a once dead world now glowed with oceans and green fields, a new Earth. Reese turned to him. "What do we call it?" Ethan smiled faintly. "Home," he said. The word felt heavier now, filled with meaning and memory. Humanity had finally found a place to begin again. Later that night, Ethan stood alone on the observation deck, watching the reborn planet spin slowly below. Lara joined him, her voice soft. "We did it," she said. "We gave humanity another chance." Ethan nodded. "Mira believed in us, not as we were but as we could be. Maybe this was her plan all along." Lara smiled faintly. "Do you think she'd be proud?" Ethan looked at the stars, his eyes reflecting their light. "I think," he said, "she'd tell us this isn't the end. It's the beginning of tomorrow." Outside, the first sunrise of the new world broke across the horizon, washing the ships in light. Humanity had fallen, evolved, and risen again, not by strength, not by luck, but by the unbreakable will to survive. And in that light, the story of Earth ended, and the story of something greater began.